Sissy said. "What?" "I'm going to run away," Joe replied in a near whisper. "What about us?" she questioned. Hello, you are listening to In My Words. The book I am reading from is titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles. This book is not intended for young readers. After each reading session, I will briefly give information about a chosen plant. I hope through my words you will gain insight, knowledge, and a deeper appreciation and understanding of this mysterious and intricate world. Though the road may be long and hard, compassion and beauty can be gained through the enjoyment of nature and experiencing its wondrous gifts. Thank you for joining me. Chapter 26. Runaways. Joe had just turned 10. He was tired of all the fighting and hitting. He wanted to run away. The only place that he could think of to run was to Grandma and Grandpa Schultz. Even though the Schultz weren't the best of grandparents, they at least didn't hit you unless you did something really wrong. In addition, they gave you food. Today is the day, he thought. Dad is out of town and Mom is gone with Johnny and Melody, so no one will be able to stop me. The thought of food and some semblance of peace urged Joe on with his plan. Knowing he couldn't risk leaving his younger siblings behind, he went to find Sissy first. Being the oldest girl in the family, all of 9 years old, she didn't like taking care of others, for they were always such a hassle, and she wanted to be left alone. So when she heard Joe calling out to her, she pretended not to notice. "Hey, Sissy!" Joe yelled once again to his sister, seeing her playing in the front yard. Still ignoring her brother, Sissy continued to hula hoop. "Sissy!" "What?" she responded with irritation. "Come here, I want to tell you something." Noticing his tone of voice was different, Sissy went in the small house to talk with her brother to find out what he wanted. Carrying the hula hoop in her hand, she went in the front door. Mindlessly tossing the hoop into the air, Sissy said, "What?" "I'm going to run away," Joe replied in a near whisper. "What about us?" she questioned. Knowing exactly what she meant by her crypt statement, Joe replied, "Come with me, then none of us will get in trouble." Thinking about it for only a mere moment, Sissy agreed and let the hoop fall to the ground as the two fortified children went to find Scott. At 8 years old, Scott seemed to be the odd man out. He never knew why, but for some reason, Dad seemed to be rougher with him. Mom acted as if he didn't exist. Joe and Sissy didn't like playing with him, but Sarah was different. He knew his middle sister liked to play dolls with him, but Scott was afraid to play with her for fear of reprisal from Dad. Occasionally, Sarah would shyly ask, "Do you want to play dolls?" Scott would say, "Okay, but don't tell Dad." "I won't," she would promise sincerely. Both knew that Scott would get in trouble if Dad ever found out that he was playing with dolls. But what Dad didn't know was that even on rarer occasions, Joe would play dolls too. They usually played with the G.I. Joe dolls and liked to pretend to be soldiers. "Hey, Scott!" Joe shouted up the stairs, knowing that Scott was playing in his bedroom. "Me and Sissy have an idea." "What?" Scott replied as he walked out of his bedroom and stood at the top of the staircase. "We want to run away," Joe said in a quieter tone as his brother neared. Scott's eyes lit up. That sounded good to him. But then he questioned with apprehension. What about Dad? What if he finds us? "When he comes home, we'll already be gone. He's not supposed to be home until tomorrow." "What happens when he gets home?" A slight tremble went through Scott as the thought of Dad's rage flashed through his mind. Joe said as he neared his brother, Sissy close behind, "By the time Dad finds us, he won't be mad anymore and won't punish us." To the young children, it really did sound reasonable. So the three of them, having agreed, went looking for their youngest sister. "Sarah! Sarah!" Sissy called out sweetly. Sarah didn't want to go to Sissy, so she ignored her call. Seconds later, she heard Joe and Scott calling for her. She thought they wanted to play, so she came out of her hiding place, which was usually in the cold porcelain-coated cast-iron bathtub, which held the family's dirty laundry until wash day. Sarah liked to hide under the clothes so no one knew where she was. Well, that's what she thought. Climbing out of the bathtub, she went to her brothers and sister. "Let's go for a walk," commanded all three older children, not giving Sarah a choice of whether to stay or go. Sarah followed. She was good at following orders. She was good at just being a lifeless shadow, witnessing a horror story without a voice to ease her fear and pain. Soon she would be intelligent enough to put her words down on paper. But over time, they too would be erased from the earth, never having a chance to tell of the ugliness of her young life. In order to get to Grandma and Grandpa Schultz, the four children would have to walk 32 miles all by themselves. Moreover, they needed to know how to get there. Joe thought he knew the way pretty well, so he was confident they would make it. Besides, if all else failed, they would ask Sarah. She always seemed to know how to get to places. The children started their journey. Hours had passed as they walked on the long, hot tar road. Sarah was tired and thirsty. Her feet burned on the pavement, even though she was wearing shoes. The soles of her shoes had long since disappeared. All that was left was just the lining. Joe carried his younger sister for a short while, and then Sissy and Scott also gave her a piggyback ride. She was carried for about 3 miles before the older children became tired of carrying her. For over 10 miles, the children walked before Sarah asked, "When will we be there?" "When we do," Joe said with irritation, being too hot to respond with kindness. Their walk was taking so long that Joe began to have second thoughts. Silence dragged on as they walked the highway until Sissy thought of an idea. "We should hitchhike." All agreed except for Sarah. She heard many times in her young life not to hitchhike, and yet now they were going to. Sarah never had much to say in anything that the three older children did. She just had to follow along as if she were some type of puppet. They would pull her strings, and she would move with the motion, even if she didn't agree with what was going on or the outcome of their actions. I appreciate all of you who are watching my videos. If you have any questions regarding plant growing, or if you are interested in learning why I wrote the books I have, and if I am working on another book or two, please leave your comments below and I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. I am doing all the editing and producing of this content on my own. I never expected doing this at this stage of my life, but when circumstances demand, then it is important for me to create income where I can. Leaving a comment will help my videos get noticed more in the future and allow other people to view them. Also, purchasing one or both of my books will be very helpful. Thank you for your time and consideration. Some fruit trees, but especially the vine, are apt to bleed excessively when they are pruned or wounded, and it has been thought that this bleeding could not be stopped. Knight states that he found the following means to answer. If to 4 parts of scraped cheese be added 1 calcined, calcined, oyster shells or other pure calcareous earth, and this composition be pressed strongly into the pores of the wood, the sap will instantly cease to flow. The largest branch may, of course, be taken off at any season with safety. Pruning cannot be properly executed with a knowledge of the nature of the tree in order to prevent the removal of too much fruit-bearing wood. Thus, the fruit of the vine is borne by shoots of the same year's growth. Springing from the wood of last year's growth, a supply of the best shoots must therefore be annually trained in. and these must in winter be reduced to a few eyes or buds to force out shoots from their lower parts only. Figs bear on wood a year old, of which a sufficiency must therefore be annually reserved, and these shoots must not be shortened, as it is chiefly their extremities which bear fruit. Peaches, apricots, and nectarines also produce their fruit on wood of the former year's growth, while apple, pear, plum, and cherry trees bear on the spurs of wood from 2 to 20 years old or more. The summer pruning of trees is the most important. It is advisable to perform it early, as in May or June, carefully preserving the finest shoots and those which can be trained in the most regular manner. Winter pruning is performed November till March, and for such trees as require a supply of young wood, the nailing of the branches must be loosened to admit of the alterations required in the training. Every branch should be left terminated with a new shoot as a leader. Knight observes that fruit trees raised from seed should neither be pruned, transplanted, nor overstimulated by a rich soil until they have borne fruit. Fruit walls should have a south aspect, but the manner in which the branches should be trained is not so generally agreed upon. Knight has successfully adopted a method of training in which a greater surface of leaf is exposed to the light than in any of the ordinary modes, and which caused the growth of peach trees to be such that at 2 years old they were 15 feet wide. Beginning with plants a year old, he headed them down early in the spring and trained only 2 shoots from each stem in opposite directions and nearly horizontal, for they only rose at an elevation of 5 degrees. When he observed any difference in the vigor of the shoots, he depressed the strongest or gave a greater elevation to the weakest, by which the uniformity of their growth was maintained, and in the summer they attained the length of 4 feet. The lateral shoots were pinched off at the first or second leaf, and were in the succeeding winter wholly destroyed. In the subsequent progress of this mode of training, the large space which would be enclosed by a semicircle resting upon the extremities of these nearly horizontal shoots is gradually filled up by other shoots which proceed divergently from them until the new shoots attain an inclination when on the side next the center of the tree. Shoots nearly horizontally are trained from them. This mode of training has a neat appearance besides being conducive to the health of the tree. Please like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to having you join me again next time, where I will highlight another plant, and I will continue to read from the book titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles, which you can purchase from Amazon.com. Thank you for having joined me.